Welcome and good morning. Maybe you have a little time to catch a cup of coffee. Take a little sip, sit down, relax for a moment. I'd like to welcome those who don't know me. I'm Reverend Peter Panagore. I've got a Master's of Divinity from Yale University. I'm a writer, and I was the host of Daily Devotions, seen by 30 million views, pairs of eyes a year, on two commercial NBC stations in Maine and New Hampshire for 15 years. And before that, I was a church pastor, and now decidedly an ex-pastor, ex-church person, post-Christian, and twice near-death experiencer, which sets me a little bit outside of doctrine, dogma, and denominationalism. For those who know me, welcome back to Not Church. Here we reveal the hidden mysteries and mysticism inside the Bible that the church either can't see or doesn't want you to know. So make sure you subscribe if you like what you hear. I have a question for you today. How many times can a person be born? Stick around for the live conversation with me after the chat and join me as we create a space today for the presence, the giver of peace. Let's take a moment. Jesus sounds like a near-death experiencer to me. I think he was a mystic. He was a code switcher, and like all mystics, he talked in metaphor and he used symbols and gave signs. Code switchers speak two languages at once. In Maine, it's Franglish. That's popular because we're so close to Quebec. Code switching is when two languages are spoken at once, using the correct vocabulary and syntax, one at the same time, like Greeklish or Spanglish. Jesus was a code switcher in Aramaic and metaphor. Every modern and ancient mystic around the world knows that metaphor is the only language we have to speak about God, the ineffable, the unspeakable. We know this because we've been to the unitive state of being, and because when we were there, we were swallowed whole by the wholeness of the oneness. So, how can you speak about the unspeakable? Metaphor. And what's your task in life? What if speaking is your task in life? What if that's your job? So let's talk about mysticism in the context of Christianity, and let's begin with being born again. There was a man named Nicodemus, a religious leader who was a Pharisee. And one dark evening, he came to Jesus and he said, "Rabbi, we all know that God sent you to teach us. Your miraculous signs and evidence are the proof that God's with you." And Jesus replied, "I tell you the truth, unless you're born again, you cannot see the commonwealth, dominion, domain, nation, realm, sovereignty of God right here, right now." So from the moment I came back from heaven 40 years ago, I was born again. And yeah, I was reading my teleprompter. So what does it mean to be born again? Let me tell you how I was born again. The first time it happened to me was before I died. That's right. I was born a human being. I was born again because I know that I'd lived other lives. And I want to say that living those other lives isn't so important to me. What's important to me is that I am soul, a soul being and consciousness, not who I was or am in other times and lifetimes. Those were all just skins I was wearing. And then the second time I was born in this life, I was what the Pentecostals call slain in the spirit. Woo! But I was. I was at a Catholic charismatic retreat in New Hampshire with a bunch of teenagers and college students. And suddenly there was an explosion in my heart like a pinprick of light, just this little tiny thing that expanded like a ball and an arrow right through me and in me and swept down in my body like the sweetness of honey and came up inside me and filled me out my arms and into my head and whoosh, I went down. And it was the sweetest buzz, the sweetest essence of my experience of my life up until that point. That's being born again too. That was a mystical experience I had. Pentecostals call it slain in the spirit or an indwelling of the Holy Spirit. Other people in other places and religions, well, they call it mysticism. They call it the indwelling of the spirit. They call it an in-body transcendental experience. Maybe you've had one like that yourself. Maybe that sort of thing happened to you. And then the next time I was reborn, born again, was after my near-death experience. And that was a major event because when I came back from that, I entered back into this body like a newborn baby. It was very different than the previous time. The previous time, I was still the same person afterwards. I had an indwelling and it was a beautiful thing and it lasted and I understood it and I still carry that with me. But it was unlike the second time because the second time, I was like a newborn baby in a body. I was a newborn near death experiencer. In the same way that a child, when born, a baby is born and their brain develops and they learn things and they're loved and they advance over a childhood, over their teen years and then through adulthood, and they keep growing and learning and growing and learning and growing and learning. And that's kind of what happens with near death experiencers. When we come back from the dead, we're born again. And it's like being a newborn baby because the perspective shifts. And it's not like it's just the experience from before. I died and I had this near death experience in the past. No, that's not the way being born again works. Being born again is a thing inside you that's living. It's a relationship with God. It's a thing that's implanted in us that gives us the eyes to see, as Jesus said in patriarchal language, the kingdom of heaven among us, within us, between us, above us, below us, shared together, like right now, shared between us in this sacred space. And I was like a newborn baby. And over my lifetime, I've had to grow. I've grown into my near death experience, just like a child grows into herself as she grows up. I keep growing. And it's not like it's just in the past, it's like it's in the present. Near death experience is something that is then and now. And it's always expanding and always growing inside us. And then, of course, died again, had another rebirth. So, how many times can you be reborn? Well, an infinite probably number of times if you keep reincarnating, but in this lifetime, as many as it takes. And you don't have to have a near death experience to reborn because Jesus, although he sounds like a near death experiencer to me and he speaks like a mystic to me, and he doesn't speak like they taught me in church, what he's saying is to Nicodemus, you need to be born again. And everybody's like, well, do I have to climb back in my mom's body? Well, no. Do you have to be baptized in the water? No. That has nothing to do with it. That might be a sign of your acceptance into the church for those of you who've been baptized, but it has nothing to do with the transcendental mystical experience of God. That's an external thing that's showing, not an internal thing that is invisible to most eyes. And the crazy thing about a near death experience or a mystical experience of any kind, and because near death experience is a kind of mystical experience, a mystical experience of any kind changes your perception. You can't see the realm, dominion, domain, sovereignty, peace of God that's all around us unless you're born again. And what is it to be born again? The person who gets a visitation from the dead. I've talked about this before. Someone you loved dies, and they come and they visit you. And now you have this born again experience where you shift from belief in the afterlife, or maybe no belief in the afterlife, and you still shift to a little bit of knowing, a little bit of being born again, because now you know your deceased loved one is still alive. And that person, unencumbered by body, inspirited, you could say, telepathically communicates with you love, beauty, truth, wellness, wholeness, forgiveness, whatever aspect of love they're called to communicate to you for your benefit. And you have a born again experience because now you move from belief into a kind of faith. Faith seems to be this thing that's built on belief and experience, which develops into knowing. Faith can develop into knowing. Every time you have one of these little born again experiences, every time, here's another way of talking about it, you die to yourself. That's a crazy thing to talk about. Someday we'll talk about that. Every time you die to yourself, every time you have this kind of mystical transcendental experience where you leave your body, or you witness a beautiful sunset that's so transcendent that the beauty itself uplifts you. These are experiences of being uplifted, rising above. So you wonder why some people can't see God all around them, why they can't see the light. And yet they love, and they see love, and love is a beautiful thing, and love is the basis of God here on earth and in the world and in the universe. Everything's made of love. So if they're loving people, then they're really um, having a transcendental experience, even if they don't know it. But here's the thing. Here's the thing. You can't see it unless you've been touched by it. That's the crazy thing about it. It happens to us. We can kind of create the environment for it, but it happens to us. I've got a question over here on YouTube. Hey, it's from Sylvia. Hi, Sylvia. Thank you for dedicating your channel and near-death experience to help us. I want to support your channel. Question: can you explain what a mystic is? Yes, I can explain what a mystic is. So, a mystic is a classical term in Western culture. And in the turn of the 1900s, it was sort of codified. A lot of research was done. Things were extracted, and a fellow by the name of William James from Harvard University came up with 4 characteristics. And maybe you read them in college in the varieties of religious experience. The 4 marks or characteristics of a mystical experience. A mystic is someone who has mystical experiences. So what's a mystical experience? Well, let me tell you what a mystic is. A mystic is a person who has an experience of God that is transient. That's the first thing. It's transient. It has a beginning and an end. It starts and it finishes. It's passive. We don't really make it happen. It's something that happens to us. It comes to us from the outside. We can be uplifted into it, or it can come into us, but we're passive in the process. It's noetic. Noetic is a word that has to do with knowledge. It's more akin to wisdom than head knowledge, because you can study every book in the world and know everything there is about all religions and know not a thing about the divine, because you have not had noetic experience. Noetic experience is the implanting or the remembrance of who you were before you were born. Remember last week we were talking about who was I before I was born? What was my name before I was born? Noetic knowledge expands an opening. It gives you a partial knowledge of who you were before you were born. It's lodged in the soul, and it's noetic because it's just out of reach of the brain. You can't really lay your finger on it. You can't really grasp it, but you know it's there. So, for instance, when a deceased loved one comes to visit after they're dead, and you have this experience where you shift from belief to knowing that that person's not dead, that they're still alive. Well, the understanding of it is just a little beyond your capacity to grasp it in your brain, but you feel it in your heart because the communication of it was telepathic, not, language, words, one word after the other, after the other, after the other. It was download of knowledge, one bulk data download of information. So, transient, passive, noetic, and the last part, the number 4 of what a mystical experience is ineffable. God is ineffable, unspeakable. We can't, because Jesus, like I said, he was a code switcher. He spoke in metaphor. Why did he speak in metaphor? Why do all mystics all over the world historically, why does everybody speak in metaphor? Because there's no language for God. It's ineffable. It's unspeakable. So, the 4 parts of a mystical experience: transient, passive, noetic, ineffable. So, that is a mystical experience. Thanks for asking, Sylvia. I'm glad to see you're using Super Chat. I appreciate that very much. Thank you. Let's see. Let's see. Anybody else here? I got a question. I love that speaking in metaphor. Yeah, speaking in metaphor. That's the only language there is. And when metaphors get conglomerated into a big space, they become symbols. A symbol is something. So a symbol is like a story. A story that's a symbol would be the two first chapters of Genesis, where we can, crush those two very different stories into one story culturally, but they become symbolic of our relationship to God. Not historical, okay? I'm not saying that. I'm saying symbolic. So, but pile a bunch of metaphors together, you get symbolism, which is different than a sign. A sign points at one thing. A sign, like stop sign, that's a sign. When Nicodemus was saying to Jesus, I've seen you perform signs and wonders. Well, the signs he was showing was like people rising from the dead, resuscitation or resurrection. Just like lots of us who are in the near-death community experience, community globally, we're raised from the dead, previously known as dead. And that whole near-death experience title name is kind of cumbersome to me. Before I joined with the International Association for Near-Death Studies, I just called it death. There was nothing near about it. I've been near to death in my life, come right up to the edge a few times, but that's very different than actually being dead. So anyway, that's just an aside. Um, Mysticism. Ken says, Mysticism, a study and an anthology by Happold. Happold, and did I have my copy out here? Oh, I do, but it's not on my desk. That book, I'll say the title again if I can see it there. Mysticism, a study and an anthology. It's a great primer. I read it in college, and right when I came back from my near-death experience, I took a class on mysticism, East and West, that next semester. And Happold was one of the books we studied, and it stuck with me all these years. I still read it. Mysticism by, I think it's H.C. Happold. Let's see, other things going on here. Praying, hey, Tamra. I cannot seem to get a conscious moment. I need some confirmation, I think. A consciousness moment. So, how do you get a consciousness moment? Asks. Don't have my glasses on. Tamra. Well, you can build toward it. And the classical way of building toward one of those moments, knowing that you're passive in the happening of it, is meditation. And meditation is the emptying of the self. Because the only thing that's between me and the divine and the holy is God. I mean, no. The only thing between me, I was pointing at God. The only thing between me and God is me. I'm in the way. My brain's understanding of itself is in the way. And in order to facilitate this kind of experience, you need to meditate this down in a way. Meditation clears the mind. And the more you practice meditation, it's cumulative over a lifetime. It's not like a one-time thing. It accumulates inside you and creates an empty space of divine connectedness. And also, there are the studies at Johns Hopkins University that have been going on for 10 years on psilocybin and transcendence and alcohol cessation and smoking cessation and end of life care and trauma, PTSD. But apparently, and I can actually speak to this because I had this experience in college, I took too much mescaline once. The first time I ever took it, I took like 3 times the dose, and I had a divine experience. I had a God experience. Now, I didn't enter into leave the duality of being and enter into the oneness, but that kind of came present to me where I was. The thing is that although that happened and it had a residual effect, um, it added to my spiritual life. But the noetic understanding was true and real, but it was also just part of my journey. And I still meditated for the rest of my life. I still meditate. And I still work my inner self in order to clear myself enough space so that I can have room for the divine to touch me. It's like waving a flag. So just to clarify, Johns Hopkins University, psilocybin study. There's a book called How to Change Your Mind by Michael Poulin that it would be worth reading if you're interested in that. Let's see. Mystical experience is personal and known to the person, like it creates an opening to the divine, which you cannot then close or go back to prior knowing without the depth of the divine forever transformed. Absolutely true. A mystical experience opens a portal to your true self, and you can't really close it. It can fade, okay, over time, but it never, ever closes. You can deny it, but it never, ever closes. It's always present, and it's always transformative. Let's see what else we got going on over here and YouTube. Oh yeah, subscribe. If you like what you hear, what's going on here, subscribe. Oh, and please, all these chat things that we do, which is wonderful. I love the live aspect of this, but all the comments go away once it gets loaded up to YouTube. It's as if nobody even participated. They're missing an algorithm. So if you could like the video, that'd be awesome. That would help a great deal. Unitary being experience can be achieved through DMT. That's true. 5-MeO DMT. The drug overpowers the ego, and there you are, and a diamond luminosity, like standing on the edge of a precipice of agony and ecstasy. Absolutely true. True. I believe I've been having spiritual experience and I have been meditating. Oh, I'd love to. You want to have her talk about it, Tamara? Book an appointment with me. We can chat about it. You and me, one-on-one. Let's see what else we got here. You could even say something about it today if you want to. I'm leaning into the screen. Let me pull the screen closer. I just bumped my camera. Let's see. Thank you, Peter. You've been telling your story. I feel like I've been touched by the divine, but I'm a little confused. Tell me what you're confused about. Being touched by the divine is the whole purpose of me being here today. That's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to facilitate being touched by the divine. That's what Not Church is all about. To create a space, a sanctuary space for being in the presence of the holy in the present. That's what we're here for. And I should check out over here on Facebook. I don't mean to ignore you people over there on Facebook. Hi, everybody. Hi, Tom and Helen and John and Rebecca. Mystical Pooh Bear, she says, yes. From Australia. Love it if you guys hook up with me on YouTube, all my Facebook friends, because this is where I'm kind of been operating. Let's see what else I see here. Mary, when it happened, I understood grace for the first time. That's right. Grace is a part of love. Grace is love. And grace is this divine indwelling. The experience of grace brings an expression of glory. And the glory in the Christian language is like this radiance of the presence of the holy that comes off of people, that we share together. That's the Christian word for it. And grace is the indwelling itself. It's the thing that uplifts. That's the Christian word for it. And whenever I use those words in this context, I give them a capital letter in the beginning to designate God, not the human understanding of grace or glory or whatever. Hey, Brooke. Good to see you. Hi, Wendy. Truly not being good enough, simply showing up and again and again and again. Yeah, this doesn't have anything to do with being good enough. Thanks, Lee and Wendy. This isn't about being good or bad for that matter. It's merely about showing up in your meditative practice and remembering the presence of God on a regular basis, because what happens is when you practice the presence of God, God becomes actually present. And, when I died, I went through a hell of my own making. I was not good enough. I was not good enough. I'm not good enough now. I'm never going to be good enough. That's not the point, because my body is not me. My body is not good enough, but my soul, oh baby, my soul is always good enough, because my soul is connected to the holy, and my body is the only thing in the way. My brain. It's not bad. Okay. I love my body. I enjoy my body. But it's not me. It's the place where I'm having fun and living my life, also in the midst of suffering. But it's not about being good or bad. It's about being present to the holy. And I see a question here from Tamra. Oh, she says, thank you. Thank you, Tamra. Thank you for Super Chat. I appreciate that $5. I do. Thank you very, very much. That helps a great deal. And you'll book an appointment. Great. Love to talk to you. Let's see what else we have here. Tamara, hello from Spain. Hola. Sue, that was Maria. Marina and Sue. Honored and privileged. I feel the anxious energy. The anxious energy can be overcome by the purity of the divine, like everything else. I still get anxious. I mean, I'm a little anxious about the state of our country right now and the state of the world. That's true. And, the pandemic and all the rest of the stuff. I have a little anxiety about it, but that's my human side. My soul side rests in the peace of the divine. And the deeper I go inside my meditation, the more I'm available to the divine, the deeper the peace is that sits inside my belly. Because I know where I'm from and I know where I'm going, and I'm not from here. I get to go home, and so do we all. So my body experiences allergies. I take medication for that. My body experiences anxiety. I do meditation for that. Medication for allergies, meditation for anxiety. I just made that up. No, it's true too. But Julie, my first glimpse of the divine love, self-love, shot me through me like a bolt of lightning, pure grace. Oh yes, I know what you're talking about. Been there, happened to me, like a bolt of lightning infilling me, obliterating my sense of self and infilling me with glory and grace and love and radiance and the presence of light itself. And I think, Julie, that that's exactly what you're talking about. Because even though our mystical experiences are, as Karen said, bespoke, that's a buzzword right now in industry, bespoke, custom made for each of us. Every mystical experience is custom made for us, and which means it's subjective to us. It gives us the message that we need in the symbols that are approachable to us. But where was I going with that? Anyway, pure grace, right? The elimination of self, the elimination of the false self, and the presence of pure grace. Yes, let go of the old categories of judging and just be in the presence of God, who is so longing with a relationship for you. Good day from Australia. Welcome over, Rebecca. Good to see you on this side of the web, YouTube. And hello from Maine, Maine, USA. Sue, mystical experiences sear on my soul and they're written there. Yeah, that's exactly. They sear on your soul and they remain written there. I always figured it was like an indelible marker or terrible idea, but like a brand. Yeah, permanently there. Same thing here, Sue. Brooke, hey. Let's see, Tom. I saw the pinprick of white light also did not enter me, but lit up the room. My spouse saw it also to confirm it was real. Yeah, there's this whole range of mystical experience. And what you just described, that's part of it too. It's a range of experience. It's not one thing. It's all these things in a category, which is why near-death experience is a mystical experience. It's a subset of mysticism. It's not, this special thing by itself. It's not. All of these experiences they're like gradations of it, okay? But it's all in one rubric, to steal my wife's science sixth grade teacher lingo. It's all in one rubric. Let's see. When I am weak, says Alisa, then I am strong, or God can reach me in the weakness, bring me loads of comfort. Yeah, that is true. It's when we're weak that we become strong. Thank you, Tamara. Thank you so much for the $20 gift. Thank you so much. I super appreciate it. It's very helpful. So back to what I was saying, though, when you're weak is when you're strong. My strength comes from God. My weakness allows the presence of God to enter into me. The elimination of ego, of my false self, allows the space because I weaken my false self to allow the space for the strong to come in. When I am dying the little death, which is another Christian name for this, when I die the little death daily, I allow space for the living light to come inside me. When I am at my weakest, I allow the strength to come into me, which is why when people suffer, they sometimes crack open to the divine presence because life sucks for them right then. And if you go deep enough and down enough, it opens space for the light. And thank you, Russell, for 4.99 in pounds, because I know you're over in England. Thanks, Russell. I appreciate it very much using Super Chat. That's awesome. And Tom, thank you also for 4.99. Thanks for the Super Chat. That was really wonderful. Thanks a lot, brother. So back to what we're looking over here, Tamara. I guess my problem is that I don't like it here. I want to go home. I know about grace. I felt grace of the Lord with me since I was a baby, but for some reason this is so negative right now. Well, the world kind of sucks. Okay, the whole planet's in trouble. We got you. We got you. Climate change. Okay, which is real as the glaciers and the ice caps are melting, changing weather everywhere, fires in California, and all sorts of other terrible things, hurricanes and typhoons. So there's an anxiety and of course the pandemic, and in the United States, the politics. Oh my God, it's terrible right now. But here's the thing. I've wanted to go home my whole life since the moment I came back. Thanks, Niall. I'll catch you next. Hold on just a sec. And thanks for the $5 there too. And I'll read what you said. Thank you for the super chat. But the world is a terrible place right now. But it's always been a terrible place. So it's terrible for us right now in the 21st century. But imagine what it was like during the Middle Ages and the bubonic plague, or when Genghis Khan came sweeping across Europe and making the biggest empire that ever existed in the entire history of the earth. So life is always hard and terrible. But as long as we're here and we bring the presence of heaven inside us, then we have the capacity to see heaven here. And yeah, it's very sad right now. And I want to go home too. But I will go home because time is short. Tick tock. Time ends. It seems long on this side, but I can tell you truly, truly, there is no time on the other side. And here time ends with space and all things, and we are freed. No rush, though. I once heard it written by Richard Bach, who wrote Jonathan Livingston Seagull, also The Illusions of the Reluctant Messiah. In that book, he wrote, hey, if you're still here, your job's not done yet. So dig inside, keep digging inside for the light within you, and join us together in our groups here, like here this in the morning on Sunday morning, where we try to bring in the sacred right now and the present where you are. So sorry, Niall, is that how? Let me put my glasses on there. I can't see it again. Too far away. Niall, hi, Peter. I'm looking to take my meditation practice further and see if I can connect with my higher self. Can you help with this? That is what I do. Yes, I can. I'm going to try to blow this whole thing up, make it a little bit larger so I can see it. Yeah, it is totally what I do. What I've spent my entire life doing. I have done this because I've needed it for my own self. After I came back from the dead, I was bereft and lost because all I wanted to do was go home. And so I've spent the last 40 years of my life digging my hole inside myself, my well inside myself, deeper and deeper and deeper and wider and wider and wider. And I do have some meditation practices that worked for me, and some yoga breath meditation practices that also deepen the overall capacity. And thank you so much, whoever was up on the top there, for the $9.99 and for the stickers. Wow, this super chat's awesome. Brooke, Soul Tribe love. Thank you, my friend. Thank you, my dear. Thank you very much. And you want to check out Brooke's, her channel's not up yet, but she's gonna have a channel up soon. It's called Brooke Grove Healing. And Brooke's a friend of mine in the near-death community experience community. Um, and she's awesome. Thanks, Brooke. Let's see. What are my thoughts about Jesus returning soon? Jesus never left. Jesus never left. That whole thing about the eschaton and the end of the time and all this kind of stuff and the rapture, that didn't even come into Christian thinking until the late 1800s. We can thank Mr. Moody from Chicago, Illinois for that, and the Moody Institute and his cronies and peers. The presence of Christ has never left. It's always been here. The light has always been here. Time is not going to end. But the kingdom can come here. That's a different story. Jesus returning, Jesus is here in our hearts always. All we have to do is look for it and open it. And the presence is always here. And when all of us, so many of us, become a channel for the divine light, there's this global phenomenon going on with near-death experience where medical science is driving spirituality globally by the hundreds of millions of mystics being created by this super conspiracy between God and scientists. Only the scientists don't know they're participating, but they're waking up to the fact that people are waking up on their tables and saying that they died and gone to heaven and met angels and God. Now there are hundreds of millions of us all over the world like this, and we're all starting to talk about it over social media, which is what we're doing right here, right now. The light of Christ is everywhere, all the time, never left. But the more of us that open our hearts and allow the channel of the light to come through us, like right at this moment, the more of us that do this, the more the presence of the patriarchal language warning, kingdom of God becomes present. That is what Jesus was talking about. He's talking about birthing it ourselves through us and our temple of our hearts. The temple of our hearts, leaking out the light of God. I don't wait for Jesus' return because the presence of Christ is always here. The light never left. And those of you, those of us who see it, know it's true because our souls have been marked by it. And a mystical experience. It's all wound together. This whole big thing, it's all wound into the oneness of being and a very center point inside your heart. So God is kinder than we think, says Rebecca. You betcha. God is compassion. God is compassion. That's why every person gets a mystical experience that's bespoke, because God is compassion. Sue, Rebecca, he might have ascended. Oh, yeah, well, yeah, he ascended, all right. But he never left because the presence of the light is still here. And people see Jesus all the time, right? In their near-death experiences. I was talking to somebody yesterday. Who was I talking to? I was talking to Tamara Richardson, who runs the IANS group out of North Carolina. And she's seen Jesus a bunch of times. People see Jesus all the time. God reaches people where they are, not where they're not. God reaches people where they are. That's why every experience is bespoke. Mystical experience is bespoke. And it's also why shows us the compassion of God. Everybody says, well, why are all these mystical experiences so different from each other? Well, they're really not. Everybody who dies leaves their body. That's one thing that's similar. And so many of us come back with a message of love. So many of us. So the message is the same, but the experience is bespoke. Thank you very much for the $4.99 up there and the $5. You guys are awesome. You're helping me a great deal. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much. Julie, thank you so much for the $4.99 and all the hearts, because the super chat, and Mary, thank you for the $5. You guys I'm trying to make my life doing this, and I'm trying to monetize my channel with commercials, because I was in commercial TV for 15 years. I mean, commercials make things free, but it doesn't always work that way. So I'm not making very much money to do this. So thank you for your support, because you're making it possible for me showing up here every single Sunday. And I want to do this because I work for God. I've worked for God since the day I came back. I have one boss. Rebecca Elliott, yes, that is Colossians in the New Testament, verse 1:17. In Jesus, all things are consistent. All things consist. Oh, in Jesus, all things consist. Right. God is in everything. Grace is in everything. The mystical spectrum is bespoke. Yeah, Brooke. You're welcome, Mary. Let's see. To add further, says Seth and Rachel, we are taught that we will inherit the earth, to live on earth the way God originally intended it before the fall of man. So those are, yeah. So as we birth heaven among us and inside us, that's what we're doing. We're making the new earth here. Okay. But there's also the unitive state of being in heaven, and there's also these other levels of heaven that people live in, visit when they're in the near-death experience. Seth, that's a huge subject. I would love to talk more about it, but it's a really big subject. But yes, I think God's inheriting the earth through our hearts right now. That's what it feels like to me. That's what I see with this great global awakening. I'm going to coin the term great global awakening, the great global mystical awakening, something like that. What's the money for, please? To get your question answered and just to be nice. People are being nice by helping support this. And thanks, Niall. You'll be in touch. Cool. Thanks. I look forward to our talk. And Seth, if you want to talk, I'd love to talk about this too, or I could talk about it on a Sunday morning. These are big questions, and Not Church is going to be answering all of these questions. I got a bazillion questions to answer, because the Bible is full of content that's mystical and that we need to talk about as a culture and as a people. So I think God's inheriting the earth right now through us, through this great awakening. And by the way, near-death experiencers are just one tiny part of the mystical community. We're maybe even the smallest part. The larger part are those who have not died and have had an experience of grace that's been transcendental and transcendent and mystical. Thanks, Charles. Thank you, Charles, for that $5 for super chat. I appreciate it. Thank you, Peter. And we would love to help you with your work here on YouTube. Sustainable. That's the goal here. I'm trying to become sustainable. Thanks, Sylvia. Exactly so. So that I can do this in perpetuity. Really. I am driven. I am compulsed. I am a messenger. That's my role. That's what I was told when I came back. That's my job. And I'm an imperfect one. Okay. And I'm not the only one, because God's sending messengers back all the time. There's a mystical conspiracy of scientists and God, remember? And all of us come back with a capacity for this. David, Paul, that is a super chat. It's kind of to tithe to Peter and not church. That's right. Thanks, David. It's like a tithe. Thanks. Rebecca, you can pay PayPal to Peter too, via the donation link. Thanks, Rebecca. Mary Laporte, Solomon, you split me. You tore my heart open. I knew you as I know myself. Bible. Okay, I'm going to read it again. King Solomon in the freaking Bible. You split me. You tore my heart open. I knew you, capital Y, I knew you as I know myself. Self disappears and you know the divine. That's how you know the divine as yourself. Solomon in the frickin' Bible. Did you ever learn that in church? Probably not. Well, it's no fault of the church, and I'm not really blaming them, but unless you had a mystical experience and you're in a culture that allows this to happen, it kind of encourages this kind of thing, it's poo-pooed on, put down, and not discussed. Thank you, Seth and Rachel Spurlock, for the $1.99 in the heart. I appreciate it. And Stardust, thank you for the $10 in super chat. I sure appreciate that too. Rebecca Angelic, yeah. Tamara, Terry, you are a wonderful, wonderful messenger. You touch me and I feel the love, the burn. I feel the burn. It is a feeling. It is a burn. It is a presence. and it's not mine, okay? Never mistake the messenger for the message. The message is unlimited and ineffable and present and lively. And the messenger is just a person, just a human being passing through, not eternal. Oh, my soul is, but my body not so much. Ursa Major. I was looking at Ursa Major, and I would love to have a moment to talk about Ursa Major, the star, which turns out not to be a single star, but a cluster of stars. I was reading just yesterday. Who knew? The Polaris North Star that Ursa Major points to. Well, Ursa Major is. Oh no, it's Polaris. Polaris is the multi-star, multiple stars there. Anyway, Ursa. Seems like most people who have an NDE get to visit the vestibule of heaven, but hardly any give much description of what lies beyond the gates. Well, we only go where we're told to go. We're not really in control. But I can talk to you about what lies beyond the gates sometime, because my near-death experience was not my only mystical experience. And the unitive mystical experiencers around the globe, Rumi, Kafir, Meister Eckhart, Julian of Norwich. I'm like them, and I'd love to talk about that, what's beyond the gates. But the problem is, once you go beyond the gates, you land in this place of ineffability. I went to the threshold and just inside the vestibule. Hui. Catherine, thank you for your kindness and your mentorship. Thank you, Catherine, for the $20. Thank you, my dear. Thank you. Appreciate it. Super chat. Vessels allowing the flow, not holding it in, not containing it, not keeping it for ourselves, which works too. Okay, you can build a belly of this, a belly full of it, and you can carry it around and dispense it out through the day. I used to do that when I was a pastor, but I found that the flow is unlimited if you open the top tap and the bottom tap. Stardust, how can we direct our prayers to help those on the West Coast regarding those awful fires? I pray for the people. When you pray for another person, you pray twice. Pray for their safety. Pray for their safety. Pray for their well-being. Pray for their kindness and their compassion and their charity in the midst of tragedy. Pray for their hearts. Yeah. Thank you, Lisa, very much for the super chat, $9.99. I appreciate it a lot. So, Charles, this is the question I wanted to ask last week, and I've got about 20 minutes, about 12 minutes left before I get at my next gig, which is a salon of discussion of mysticism with a private place. And if you're interested, you could go to my website and subscribe for my weekly newsletter and get the link. It's called Mystic Tea Salon. But Charles, when you had your NDE, you said God spoke your name, the name which is the essence of who you are, a name which you can't pronounce. Quite true. My name is ineffable. My soul name is ineffable because there are no things over on the other side. Not my soul is not even a thing. Thingness, this is the thing, okay? There's the bell thing, and there's the glasses thing, and there's the mug thing, and I'm a thing, and there's my eye thing, and my earlobe thing, but in heaven there are no things, not even names that can be spoken, because there are no things. There's no brains. There's no language. It's all direct, telepathically. Seth, I'd love to hear more about how you saw a veil over the earth. Thank you, Lisa, for the $9.99. This is very nice of you for the super chat. Hearts to you too, and thank you. Sure. Get the free astronomy app at the Play Store. Yeah, I've got Star Walk. I use Star Walk. I paid a couple of bucks for it, but jeepers creepers, it's awesome. And I live in a place where there's lots of stars because we have very little light. So the veil. This is another very, very big question, Seth. So I'll give you a little lowdown on it, but maybe I'll talk about the veil next week. Because the veil is my brain. My brain is the veil. And the veil is all things that are things. The whole universe is the veil. From the beginning of the Big Bang and the compression of that super, 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 super small spot expansion 13 billion years, and all the galaxies inside it, and all of the star systems, and all of the muons, and all the quarks, and the dark matter, and my molecules and your molecules. All of it is the veil itself. It's the veil of forgetfulness. It's the veil of not seeing the divine light, which is inside of all things. And why is it here? Because if it wasn't here, it wouldn't exist. The universe needs this in order to exist. The veil is the very reason that the place is real. And the veil of my particular veil, my particular brain, and yours too, with your eyeballs and your ears and your sensory perceptors and your nerve endings and all these things, your size and your shape and your culture and your history and all these things, your DNA. That's all part of the veil too. And we're living inside this thing. And it prevents us from seeing. And meditation peels back the layers, one after another, peels back the layers, thins the veil, allows us to see through, allows us to peep, catch a glimpse, allows the light to enter in. Because that's what happens with binoculars. When you see a long distance, light comes in into your eyes. Meditation is a set of binoculars that thins the veil, that allows light to come into us. But I'd love to talk more about the veil. I got a ton to say about that. Thank you, Kelly, for the $25. Thank you very much for the super chat. I super appreciate it. It's very kind of you. Thank you. Yeah, I've got about 9 minutes or 8 minutes. Let's see where I'm going. Follow up. Do you choose? I didn't choose my earthly name. My mom and my dad gave it to me because it runs down my family line. Peter, Petros. As you know, I'm Petros. That's my name, actually. And my dad's Petros. And his father was Panayotis, and his father's father, his grandfather was supposed to be Panayotis. And the one before that was Petros. It's like, so, and Panagore, that's totally made up. My grandfather made that name up. Illegal immigrant. That's another story. I didn't choose my name. And my name, my soul name, was the name that called me into being. Not Peter into being, but the essence of my soul into being. My created self is breathed into being with this name that is still being called. I still hear this inside me. It's the same echo of the presence. It's the same echo of the light. It's the same echo of being compelled to be a messenger. All of that is one thing. All of that is the calling. And not one of those things can I say directly or accurately, because ineffability. I think there are stacks of stories about what's beyond the veil. Peter's stories too. Trisha Barker's interviews plenty. Yeah, Trisha Barker. Thanks, Rebecca. She talks about what's beyond the veil too. You don't have to die to experience it, Rebecca says, and she's totally right. That's why mystical experiences happen all the time. You don't need to die to do this. You just need to pay attention and remember. Pay attention and remember. Be present to the divine. God can just take you in spirit. I know this is true. I know Rebecca. We've talked about this. I've read it in all sorts of books, all down through history. Brooke, thus find the simplest, most profound instruction for spiritual sadhana, repeated nearly verbatim in both the Indian yogic text, the Vijnana Bhairava, and the early Christian manual of prayer. Yeah, meditation and prayer is super simple. It's not complicated. It's very easy, and you don't need any sort of education for it. And I'm gonna go with Pantajali and the sutras. The Pantajali sutras, they talk about the same thing. It's always about the repetition of the name of God. I repeat the name of God. That's my prayer. My prayer is Jesus. It's a human name, okay? And the Pantajali sutras, it's but we say Om because Om creates all these vibrations. But underneath the Om and in the sutras, it's and which I sometimes do in my meditation. I should talk about that sometime. Sometimes I hum in my meditation. I'll tell you about that. But Brooke is totally right. It's the simplest, most profound instruction for spiritual in the yogic holy text, Vijnana Bhairava. Good morning, Shane. The philokalia, let the mind sink into the heart. The philokalia, that's a Greek Christian thing. Let the mind sink into the heart. Let the mind sink into the heart. And that's the difference between mindfulness meditation, which is wonderful, and heartfulness meditation, which is mindfulness meditation sinking into the heart. Sinking into the heart. Breathing into the heart. Focusing into the heart. That's a beautiful, beautiful opening for all of us. I've got to go in a couple of minutes, my friends. Love you too, Kelly. Thank you. So you say we need your wisdom. Thank you very much. I know I've spent my whole life trying to develop language. I'm just coming out now. Not church has been my goal for 40 freaking years. I've been aiming to get free of the church to speak of what I know to be true. But I wanted the credibility and I wanted the credentials and the skill set in order to speak wisdom that isn't mine. The wisdom isn't mine. It belongs to the wise one, the only one. I'm just a vehicle. So don't ever confuse me with it, but it is my job and I'm doing my best. Thanks. Oh, Harley Davidson going by out there. Stone Rock, that's Peter, yes. In sign language, Peter, P. That's my name in sign language. And when I stuttered, it was Peter. Pooh shares his love light, honey. Back to Pooh. Your aura is lit up right now, says Brooke. It's beautiful. Well, thanks, Brooke. You can light your aura up. You can light your aura up. And that's the yogic practice of inner meditation that I use inside my Hatha yoga, my Vipassana yoga, helps that happen. But thanks. It's Stardust. Once upon a time when my heart felt broken, Yeshua, the older name for Jesus, collected me and took me over to experience healing within a kind of spiritual hospital, and he comforted me exactly. 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 That's what God can do. That's what God does. And we have this big taboo in our culture. We're not supposed to talk about it. Shh. Only kooky people are mystical. That's one of the reasons why it took me freaking 40 years to get to the point where I am, because I wanted some sort of credibility. I wanted people to be able to say, oh, well, he's kind of accomplished, isn't he? He can't be all crazy. So I was out the other day. One of my neighbors said, well, we all know you're a little kook. I know people think I'm a little kooky, but you can't argue with success. And you can't argue with articulation and all this stuff. And that's why I'm doing what I'm doing. That's why I did all that stuff in the past. All I want to do is effectively communicate the message itself. And the best way to do that is with no words at all, but through the presence of the divine itself. And I wanted to position myself for the job that I was given. And I was given the opportunities by God. And the after effects, someday I should talk about the crazy after effects that I've had that enabled me to do all this stuff. It wasn't just me, okay? Definitely didn't do this on my own. All right, my friends, I got 2 minutes. We're here to increase our treasure, to drink in more of the divine infinite. Yeah. We're here to drink in the infinite. And when we drink in the infinite, it spills out from us. The more we drink it in, the more it spills out from us in the world. And the more it spills out from us in the world, the more we connect to each other they're all drinking the same stuff. That's what we're here for. Awesome, Not Church. Thanks, Vicky. Thanks, Sylvia. Been waiting for you. Been waiting for your words, but didn't know it, Ellen. Thanks, Elisa. Thank you, Lee and Tamara and Brooke. I'm dyslexic, Brooke. I don't really care about typos. Stardust, I would love to hear more about the after effects. Yeah. Creativity, athleticism, electromagnetic things, dreams, dislocation in time, all sorts of stuff. And it's not always been pleasant. Let's just say sometimes it has often felt as much of a curse as a blessing. And I've got to go, my friends. I've got to go. And thanks for playing the chickadee every day. I sent the chickadee to Shane. I love everybody. God is love. And I'm sorry about all my friends over there on YouTube. I'm not on YouTube, on Facebook. But I've got to go because I'm supposed to be somewhere else. I love you guys. I'll check back on the comments on Facebook later today. Peace and love. See you on the flip side. Rastafari, Jah love. Jah Rastafari. Jah love. Peace and love. See you next week. Not church. Live. Thanks for all your super chats.